Hi, I'm Susan Swarner with the Westchester Township History Museum, and today we are going to be talking about the brood 10 cicadas. The brood 10 cicadas are a historic population of 17-year periodical cicadas, meaning they have a 17-year lifespan. So this year there are trillions of them that are going to be coming up from the ground. They're called brood 10 because they're the 10th group of cicadas that scientists have been tracking for a long, long time. So they're going to be emerging from New York all the way to Illinois, from Georgia all the way up to Michigan. So parts of Indiana are going to see and hear a lot of cicadas this year. These 17-year cicadas have the longest lifespan of any insect, and they spend most of that lifespan underground. They'll live about 12 inches beneath the surface of the soil, and they'll be in a form called a nymph. And they'll just live under there, and they'll feed on something called xylem, which they get from tree roots. Xylem is the part of the tree that sends nutrients and water through it. Then, when they're just under 17 years old, they'll burrow up to about 4 to 6 inches below the surface of the soil, and then they wait until a signal. What they need to tell them to come to the surface is a couple of 80-degree days and some rain. Once that happens, they'll burrow up through the soil, they'll merge through a hole, and they'll climb up a surface like a tree trunk. Once they've climbed up that tree trunk, they'll shed that nymph exoskeleton, and that's when they turn into what we recognize as cicadas, with the wings and the bright red eyes. Then they will fly up to the top of the trees, and the male cicadas will just scream and scream. And they'll do that until they attract a mate. Once the females come, they've mated, then the female, we'll use our tulip tree here to show this, will crawl to the edge of a twig on a branch, make a tiny, tiny slit, really doesn't hurt the tree, and then they will lay their eggs in that slit in the branch. Then once those eggs hatch, they fall to the ground, burrow down 12 inches, and start that 17-year cycle all over again. Here we have a fully emerged adult 17-year periodical cicada. A really easy way to identify these guys is by those bright red eyes that they have. They also have translucent wings with orange veins, and they have a black thorax or midsection of the body. All really distinct characteristics of this particular type of periodical cicada. A lot of people assume cicadas make noise the same way crickets do, by rubbing their wings together. But cicadas actually have an organ called a timbal, and that timbal has a series of ribs around it. So whenever cicadas flex their muscles, each one of those ribs makes a click, and together, when they do it fast enough, that click creates that buzzing noise that you hear incessantly when the cicadas emerge, and you hear it nonstop. If you want to try to figure out how that sound is created at home, you can find a bendy straw. This is a really good model of what that timbal looks like with that series of ribs. When you push the bendy straw in and out, it makes a noise, kind of like the click of a cicada on the timbal. And if you could do that fast enough, you'd be able to create a similar buzzing noise that a cicada can make. Like I said before, these 17-year cicadas have the longest life cycle of any insect, and scientists aren't really sure why that is. One theory is that it helps them avoid predators. If they're only coming up every 13 to 17 years, they're going to encounter predators less, and predators can't really depend on them as a food source because they're not predictable enough. So they're going to be able to grow their population, and a lot more will be able to survive. Another theory has to do with way back during the Ice Age. If these insects weren't coming up very often, they're going to avoid those really cold periods on our planet, which means they're not going to emerge during a really deep freeze, and they're going to survive a lot longer and be able to reproduce more when they do come up out of the ground. But again, scientists aren't really sure why they have these 13-year and 17-year life cycles. In addition to periodical cicadas, there are also annual cicadas, and these are cicadas that come out every single summer. They're not on a 17-year or 13-year lifespan like the periodical ones, so you always have a chance to see these emerging from their exoskeletons. And here we have an annual cicada emerging. You can see it does not have the bright red eyes. When periodical cicadas emerge, they are a bright white. These have a little more green on them, but still the same process of emerging from that exoskeleton, so it's going to look very similar to that periodical cicada emerging. Here's another view of the cicada emerging. This process does take a little bit of time, so if you spot one of these in your yard or at a park and you want to watch it, just be prepared to sit for a little while and quietly watch. But here you can really see kind of that shell, that exoskeleton that's left behind. It looks a lot like the cicada, but it's just a shell of that bug, and then you can see the cicada emerging. Here we have the fully emerged annual cicada sitting on top of its left behind exoskeleton. Again, it's going to leave that exoskeleton behind on the tree. Eventually it will dry off enough that it can fly away and its wings will be unfolded and a lot bigger. But for now you can see this is really similar to how the periodical cicada would look when it emerges. Big difference, this one does not have those bright red eyes. It also has a lot more green and brown on it. The periodical cicadas are really bright white when they first emerge. If you want to learn more about cicadas and possibly learn about how you can help track some of these cicadas, you can visit cicadasafari.org. It is a website that has a whole bunch of facts, but also information about a citizen science project that's happening around cicadas. There's an app you can download on your smartphone or your tablet that allows you to track the cicadas you see. You can also see where other people have tracked cicadas to see where they are emerging in 2021. So this is a great resource to use if you want to learn a whole lot more about the periodical cicadas. Like I said earlier, a lot of parts of Indiana are going to get to see these Brood 10 cicadas, but here in Porter County, we really didn't see any at all. But don't give up hope, because our periodical 17-year cicadas are going to be coming out in 2024. That's when Brood 13 is going to emerge from the soil and start flying around. So again, I'm Susan Swarner from the Westchester Township History Museum. Thank you so much for joining me today.